When it comes to data quality, you have to be precise. I mean, before you can even start testing your data, you've got to tell your tools exactly what to look at. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on data connections in Great Expectations and show you a super clean and intuitive way to do it, called the Fluent approach. Think about it. Your data is probably all over the place, right? Databases, the cloud, local files. But you almost never need to validate everything all at once. You need to get specific. So how do you tell your system, hey, I only want to test the user records from last month, or just validate this one CSV file? That level of precision? Well, that's exactly the puzzle we're going to solve today. So here's our game plan. First, we'll build a super simple mental model for how to think about your data. Then, we'll turn that model into actual code to connect to some files. After that, you'll see why this whole approach is so powerful. It's all about consistency. And finally, we'll lock in the key things you should remember. Let's dive in. All right, first things first. Before we write a single line of code, it really helps to have a simple analogy for how Great Expectations thinks about its data connections. And honestly, the best one I found? Just imagine you're navigating a library. Okay, and this is absolutely crucial. Great Expectations is all about being laser-focused. You never just point it at some giant data warehouse and say, go for it. No way. Instead, you are always validating a specific, well-defined batch of data. This idea is the foundation for everything we're about to do. So let's start with the biggest piece, the data source. In our analogy, this is the entire library building. It's your top-level connector to a whole data system. Think your entire Postgres table, your S3 bucket, or even just the files on your local computer. It's the front door. Okay, now we zoom in a little. If the data source is the library, then a data asset is a specific book you pull right off the shelf. It might be a single table in your database, like, say, nyc_taxi_data. Or maybe it's one particular CSV file sitting in that S3 bucket. It's the what you actually want to look at. And finally, we get down to the batch definition. This is the chapter you want to read from that book. Are you going to read the whole thing, cover to cover? Or are you just interested in the data from, say, January? This is what defines the precise slice of your data asset that gets pulled into a batch to be validated. Library, book, chapter. Makes sense, right? All right, enough theory. Let's actually put this into practice. We're going to take our library, book, chapter model and translate it directly into Python code. We'll start with something super common, connecting to a local file using pandas. Now, here's one way you could do it. Step 1, you add a data source. That's our library. Then you use that new data source object to add a data asset. That's our book. And finally, you use the data asset to add a batch definition, our chapter. It totally works, but, it means creating 3 different variables across 3 separate lines of code. It's logical, sure, but it feels a little clunky, a little disjointed. What if you could express that entire library to book to chapter idea in just one single flowing statement? Well, you can. And that is the whole idea behind the Fluent API. And here it is. Just look at how this reads. It's almost like a sentence. You start with your context.sources, you add pandas for the library, and then you immediately chain .add CSV asset for the book. And you finish it off by chaining the batch definition for the chapter. It's one continuous thought. This just makes your code so much cleaner, more readable, and honestly, a lot harder to mess up. Okay, so here's where the Fluent method really starts to shine. It's not just about tidying up one connection, it's about giving you a single predictable pattern for all your connections. This is the power of consistency. Just look at this side by side. On the left, we're connecting to a local CSV file with pandas. On the right, we're connecting to a SQL table. See the pattern? Yeah, the specific method names change. Add_pandas file system becomes add_SQL, and add_CSV asset becomes add table asset. But that fundamental flow, that chaining from the source to the asset, it's identical. And this right here, this is the big win. Once you get the hang of this pattern, of chaining these methods together, you've basically unlocked how to connect to almost any data source Great Expectations can handle. Spark, BigQuery, Redshift, you name it. You learn the pattern once and you can use it everywhere. All right, let's bring it home. We're going to quickly recap the key ideas from today. These are the concepts you'll want to have in your back pocket the next time you're setting up a new data connection. So 4 key things. First, that logic chain. Always think library, book, chapter. In GE terms, that's data source, data asset, batch definition. Second, use that fluent chaining. It just makes for cleaner, more intuitive code. Third, always remember, you validate a batch, a specific slice of data, not the whole thing. And one last practical tip on immutability. Once you add a data source configuration to a file-based context, it's saved there. You don't have to define it in your code over and over again.
So we'll leave you with a question to chew on. When the very first step of your data quality process, just making the connection, is this clear and this intentional, it can't help but raise the bar for everything that comes next. So if your connections are this clear, what greater things will you start to expect from your data?